What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Next Level Podcast. These last couple of months have been filled with travel and workshops and speaking engagements. It's been so much fun, really. We were in Wisconsin at the WLECA conference, the Wisconsin Law Enforcement Canine Handler Association conference. So thank you guys for having us out there. We were able to create canine profiles for every team that was out there that breaks down the psychological traits and instincts that were in every single dog, which really allows us to understand why that specific dog has certain tendencies and why they may learn different than some of the other dogs. Then we went to the International Casino and Resort Working Dog Conference. I hope I got that right. Thank you, Ryan Milburn, for having my family and myself out there. We got to speak about the realities of real life deployments. We talk about most of my deployments, my major deployments here in Dallas, my failures, my successes, and everything in between. And then we wrapped it up here in Dallas at the Emerging Drug Trends Conference, where we talked about the science of canine detection and what the future may look like, which is a great segue into today's episode, where we have Dr. Lauryn Degreeff and Dr. Nathan Hall. Dr. Nathan Hall is from Texas Tech University, and Dr. Lauryn Degreeff is from Florida International University. Both are associate professors, and they have done an amazing job helping our industry understand all the research they've done on canine olfaction. If you are a detection team, this is a must hear. There's so much good information. I've probably listened to this a million times, and I still get something out of it every single time I do. And I'm excited to have them back in the future because honestly, there's just so much good information there. So without further ado, Dr. Nathan Hall and Dr. Lauryn Degreeff. We're here at the 2024 HITS Canine Conference. You guys have been here in the past. How has it been in New Orleans this year?
I feel like they have a really good turnout this year.
Yeah, it's been huge.
Yeah, and the venue's set up nicely. I like it. I've gotten lost in the hotel only 2 or 3 times.
It is a very confusing navigating one place to the other. The elevators are the most confusing part.
I do like that most of the classrooms are on the same plane, though, like the same floor. It doesn't take... Like, I didn't know which classroom you're... Of course, it's going to be the last one, right? The last one that I decided to go into. But even that wasn't difficult because there was only 4 classes and they're on the same floor.
Once you get to the class space, it's super easy.
Yeah.
This was a good venue.
Yeah.
Sure.
One of the things I definitely want to plug is your book, which was interesting because you wrote a chapter or helped author a chapter. Is that correct in there?
I did, didn't I? Can't remember now.
You have one that's definitely yours, and you might be co-authored elsewhere, but you definitely have one. I'm glad he's checking.
Yes. I'm pretty sure you are because I read the chapter, so yes.
Oh, there
it is. There's my name. Yep, here I am.
See there.
Yep, you are correct. Did I write 1 or 2?
Does that mean I get both of your autographs in the book now, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I'd be happy to autograph
and then
just one. I was only asked for one.
I wrote one in, and by us,
in Lucia's book.
Yeah, in Lucia Lazarowski's book. And by Nathan and I, that would be mostly our grad student.
Edited.
Our grad student.
The same document.
Yes.
So, Lauren, what inspired you to write the book?
I was invited to write the book. I gave a talk at a Gordon research conference, which is kind of like a weird little cultish research conference in the chemistry and chemistry adjacent fields.
Yeah.
Where they all go to a small university. They make everybody stay in dorms together. They all eat in the cafeteria together, and then anyway. I got invited to give a talk at a Gordon research conference, which was really interesting, and I titled it Canines the Original Biosensors, and I guess the book publisher was there, and they invited me to write a book, and I tentatively said yes, and then it was really fun getting all my friends, like Nathan, together to write the book.
Although he didn't remember.
He did forget, and it actually worked out well. It's like the silver lining of COVID for me is that everybody ended up writing the book chapters during COVID. So they actually which is one of the reasons why I got so long, is because everybody had time to actually sit down and write. And then the reason why we did a spin-off conference was because I got all of my friends to write chapters. And so we all said, man, this is a great author list. Wouldn't it be fun if we were all in the same place?
That's right. I was at the conference, so I had to have written a chapter. Yeah. Okay. All makes sense now.
So for those of our audience that may not know who you guys are, give us like a quick background. We don't have to go too in depth because I'll probably do the prologue with a little bit of information about both of you. But just give us an idea of Yeah, we'll start with you, Nathan. Where are you from? Why'd you get into your specific discipline and what you're doing now?
So I'm from St. Pete, Florida originally, and how did I get in? I was originally going to be a veterinarian, so I always was going to be on the animal side.
Yeah.
And then when I was an undergraduate, I did a project that was looking at a cognitive study with bats. You don't have to do all the different topics of it, but what was really interesting is that I thought everything was working, but then the bats had to cheat. And they cheated using an olfactory stimulus. And I had never even thought, like, a bat's sense of smell. Like, I didn't even think of the sense of smell.
Yeah.
And as angry as I was that they had ruined that experiment, I had to redo everything from scratch. I was, like, just so intrigued and baffled by that. And how did I miss that?
Yeah.
And then I wanted to work with dogs and sense of smell. And then did my PhD in psychology. And then here I am.
And you're doing animal behavior.
Yeah.
You're spoken a lot of time. And I've been to a couple of your classes focusing on, detection, odor detection. So there's a lot of chemistry that comes behind that. And you're at Texas Tech now, right?
Yes.
So what is what's your title at Texas Tech, and what are you doing now?
I'm an associate professor of companion animal science, and then I run the Canine Olfaction Research and Education Lab.
Awesome.
So we do all things related to dog detection. We do things related to training dogs for adoption. So we have partnerships with our local shelters. We work with dropout detection dogs as well, and they all come through our program. And we have dogs up for adoption all the time. So, like, fun adjacent is finding dogs homes. It's kind of like a side passion project that actually merges really quite nicely with what we do.
That is really awesome. I had no idea that was part of what happens there. That's amazing. Lauren, will you give us a little bit of background?
Sure. Well, if we're going to go back, so I am from a really small town in Illinois. I left immediately upon graduation. Not that it's not a lovely town, but yeah, immediately. And I also wanted to be a veterinarian. I bet a lot of us in this field at some point.
Probably, yeah.
But then I realized that I did not want to have to do surgery on animals or see animals in pain. And so that was not going to work. And so ironically, I then decided I wanted to be a forensic pathologist and be a medical examiner and do autopsies, because apparently people in pain was less of a concern of mine.
Well, they're not really in pain.
No, well, not anymore.
Yeah.
They were at one point, potentially, if they're there. And I went to NYU, and I was going to go to medical school. And then I actually got to work for the deputy chief medical examiner of New York City, and work in the morgue one summer as an intern. And on Fridays, he used to let me go follow other forensic disciplines around.
Wow.
And I followed the forensic chemist and was like, nope, this is it. This is what I want to do. And I didn't particularly want to do med school anyway.
Yeah.
So I switched. It required a little bit of a casual right turn in my schooling. Did some extra schooling to get the chemistry degree. And then I ultimately decided that I wanted to do arson and explosives analysis. Oh, wow. And I went to grad school at Florida International University to get my PhD. And then when I got there, I met Dr. Ken Furton, who does research with canines and odor chemistry. And then I made yet another shift and said, no, never mind, not explosives, dogs. And then I've stuck with it since, so I'm very thankful to him for being my initial mentor into an entrance into this field. And I left FIU for a good number of years, and now I am recently back as an associate professor. I have the Degreeff Odor Chemistry Group.
And you have a bunch of PhD students, right, that you get to mentor, right?
Yes. So
how's that been now that you're taking a different position where you're kind of influencing the future of forensic chemistry?
I love it. I worked for the Naval Research Laboratory for a long time, which was great. But I do really like being in a university. I love having the grad students. They're wonderful. I have a lot. I have 10 last year, 9 this year, because apparently they do graduate eventually. But no, they're a lot of fun. They have great ideas. I haven't had a dud yet, so knock on wood.
Nice.
They're listening.
No complaints.
Are they working on any projects that you'd like to highlight or shout out?
Oh, goodness gracious. We have Fantasia, who is working on when does living human set turn into dead human set to help with search and rescue.
That's amazing.
I have Emma and Lydia that both worked on vapor transport, one from buried explosives and the other one the vapor transport in the nasal cavity. And that was actually with Dr. Lindsay Waldrop Chapman University. I have Michelle Karpinski, who is working with Paul Bunker, doing oil detection, looking into crude oil detection.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. There's a lot of them. There's
Yeah.
a lot of kids.
We'll forgive you if we don't remember all of
There's
it.
I have a lot of stuff going on with train aids and contamination. And I recently got to bring on a postdoc, Rashali Dargan, who is awesome because she came from Shari Forbes' lab, so she does human remains research.
Nice. So with some history there and some knowledge there.
Yeah.
Brings to the table.
She jumped right in. She's probably the best hire I've ever made. She's great.
That's awesome. What about you, Nathan? I'm assuming it's kind of similar for you, right? Yep. How many PhD students are you mentoring at the moment? And is that the right word, by the way, mentoring?
Yeah, mentoring
okay.
is the right word. Yeah. Much smaller group than Lauren's, but we've got
undergrads, though.
We do have a lot of undergrads, but yeah, we've got 3 PhD students right now and a postdoc.
Awesome.
And then I have another colleague who was my postdoc, but is now an assistant professor in our department, so we work together. So as a whole lab group, it's essentially 2 faculty, postdoc, 3 graduate students.
So what are some of the projects you guys are working on, and maybe highlight your favorite project you've been a part of, either at Texas Tech or in conjunction with other organizations?
It's hard to say a favorite project because you kind of all...
It's like your favorite kid, right?
Yeah, you like and hate each one of them to some degree.
Because
because there's most definitely substantial pain points in every project.
for sure.
Can you give a couple of examples?
We were trying to narrow down. I think probably one of the most fun recent pain point projects was probably the Human Scent project, where we trap people in boxes and then we
Say that again. You what?
We put people in boxes.
Oh.
I said
Michelle
traps,
in a
but
box.
Oh, nice.
Shalman in a box. They put her in a box.
she did that voluntarily.
Is there video of this somewhere?
She posted a picture.
Spectacular photo.
Yes. We gave her oxygen. She went in voluntarily before we get too far off. I was in that box. Actually, the boxes were really quite wonderful. I was thinking about selling them as pods at one point because if you're because you can't hear. Once you get in, you can't hear anything. You're inside this plexiglass box.
Wow.
So we did it. It was, you could be in there and just mindfulness. Sit with yourself.
Yes.
You could do some work. If someone wants to bother you, you're just like, can't hear
If
you.
you can send me a picture, I'll overlay it during this conversation so people have a reference.
Yeah, I've got one of me in the box.
Perfect.
And then what I would occasionally do, just to see how much do my students care about me, is I'd sit in the box and go, and wait for them to come in.
That's so
and see what
bad.
happened. And one of them came in, looked at me, and then walked out.
Wow.
They said later that they knew I was joking, but
yeah.
it's still a little offensive.
Sure. Awesome. So I know it's hard to pick your favorite project, but what about some of the newer things you're doing? What are some of the things that you can talk about? Because I know some of the times that you guys are working on projects that you can't really speak to, maybe because of the people who are funding it. But can you speak to some of the recent things you've done?
Yeah, well, I guess I didn't even finish all the Human Scent project.
Yeah.
I just told you we put people in boxes.
Yeah. That was good enough for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was the main thing.
takeaway?
No. The main takeaway from that, because so we vacuumed out the odor from that, trained the dogs to find the box with people, and then we actually then would take different samples from the person and see which ones would the dogs generalize or spontaneously respond to.
Yep.
Something that you held under your arm, things that you rubbed on your arms, T-shirts that you wore. We did a bunch of crazy things. We made people shower right before at the lab, then jump straight into the box. They wore clothes. People have asked me before, what about clothes? Everyone wore clothes.
That's nice. Yeah.
They didn't get that crazy. But one of the interesting things is that we found the dogs generalized to nothing over and over and over and over again. And we were reaching for things. We're like, well, what about cut your hair off? So my postdoc cut his hair off and put hair in there to see if they would respond to that. Nothing. And then we tried breath, which was really interesting. We blew into a jar and then vacuumed the air from that jar over, and the dogs hit that right away.
Wow.
And that was what they responded to quite substantially. And then we even put people in the box with a snorkel on. And I think I have a picture of that somewhere. But so then you would have the snorkel, you get inside the box, and your breath is being exhausted outside of the box through the snorkel while the person is inside of the box. And the dogs actually showed a big decrement in responding then when you took the breath away.
I like it when science works.
I know. Yeah. Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. So we've been trying to extend that out into the field, but that's been a whole nother series of pain points. But that was fun, and I don't want to take up all the time because I could keep going with. Every project is fun for a variety of reasons, or else we wouldn't do it. So
That is true.
all of my projects are fun to me. Other people.
Now you're trying to walk back having a favorite child. Is what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. I love them all.
So let's talk about the mod system for a second,
Okay.
because I know it's something that had, for whatever reason, picked up popularity, and then I didn't hear about it for a while, and now I'm starting to hear about it again.
Yeah, so the mod is the mixed odor delivery device that I came up with by the request of Office of Naval Research when I was working at the Navy to solve a problem they had where they wanted to be able to train dogs to new binary mixtures like ammonium nitrate or what have you, based mixtures, and they wanted to be able to do it in the field without having to bring out the chemists or the bomb techs to actually make the explosive, train the dogs. So they were finding that when they would train them here and then when they would go abroad that the dogs were not hitting on the mixtures because obviously you're buying different things.
Yep.
And a lot of the time they were just training on the oxidizer alone, but because the oxidizer doesn't have much odor and then what's mixed with it often does have a lot of odor, it was the dogs weren't generalizing readily to those mixtures. And Nathan did a really nice study actually that goes along with this. And I think you used the mods. Did you end up using the mods or not using the mods?
We started using them, and that was right when I then got my job at Texas Tech.
Ah, yes.
So then we moved, and that project
Yeah.
continued on.
Okay, fair. So anyhow, that was that, and then we started using them also to train with drugs and to get used for the dogs to get used to the presence of different adulterants, which is such a big problem because you know on the street you're rarely going to find something pure, at least it's depending on what the dog is looking for, but less common. And then the reason why it disappeared so it was being sold by something called Per Vivo and then mostly through Precision Explosives for a period of time. Okay. There was an issue with licensing, which for the record had nothing to do with Precision Explosives. And Precision Explosives was no longer able to sell it or manufacture it. But, and that's kind of where that lives. But they've come up with a different version. It's not exactly the mod, but it has the same concept. And that's really going to be cool because you could screw the TADs, the training aid delivery devices, into it. So instead of having to get special vials that fit specifically, you can screw your TAD. And then I think he's interested in possibly also being able to screw mason jars into it. But right now he's focusing on TADs into it. So it's just it's a lid with 4 pieces. And I haven't gotten it yet. He's supposed to be sending it to me so I can test it. But it's got 4 pieces, and you can screw up to 4 TADs into it. And then whatever's in the TAD will come down a channel and mix, and they'll get the mixed odor out of the top.
Nice.
So could you explain why that would be beneficial to a dog on for the handler who may not be familiar with the mod? Why? Yeah, so I feel like you probably
that
have
nicely into your research.
There we go.
Me. Okay.
Yeah, you mixtures. Go.
Me mixtures. All right. Mixtures are. There's a lot to unpack. So I just gave 2 hours of talking about
yes, you did
generalization and different kinds of things. So mixtures are really interesting because you get a bunch of weird things that can happen.
Yeah.
So one is that, and I didn't actually use this one in my talk, but one that I use all the time is that you can get A plus B, so 2 different odors, mix them together, and they produce C, not A, B.
And B. Yeah.
And a good example of that is I can take an odor that smells like strawberry, an odor that smells like caramel, mix those together, and it produces a pineapple perception. So not any of those individual components, something completely different and unique from that. And those phenomena also depend on the ratios of those different mixtures that are occurring in. But then also, and from a bigger generalization phenomenon, is that odor A is not necessarily the same or going to be generalized as A plus B.
Yeah.
You have to learn that I don't want to just find A, because if you're just doing A as my target, A plus B is not a target.
Yeah.
And then the dog may not spontaneously generalize to A plus B as a target because it is different than just A, which I've been trained to over and over again. So what we did in the ammonium nitrate study before was, ammonium nitrate is A, and one group of dogs were trained to ammonium nitrate A over again. And another group of dogs were trained to A plus B, A plus C, A plus D, A plus E, A plus G. I forget my alphabet.
I think we're good now.
CDI, yeah, we get the point, yeah.
Whatever. But then we tested, the more important one is that we tested spontaneous generalization in probes, where you give them A plus Z, A plus X, A plus things that they hadn't ever seen before in testing.
Yeah.
And the dogs that were trained to A over and over again, when you gave them a novel mixture, they showed a substantial decrement in detection. Their hit rate went down to around 20%. But then if you gave the dogs that had that A plus B, A plus C, etc., test novel mixtures, they responded at the exact same rate as if it was a trained odor.
Yeah.
So they maintain that same target hit rate.
So this may not be the best example, but is that the reason why, like, let's say TATP, if you train a dog on acetone or peroxide, they're not, well, it's raining out there, huh? It's thundering now. Almost lost my thought there. So the TATP, you train a dog on acetone, train a dog on peroxide, but then that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to hit on TATP. Would that, is that following that same logic?
Well, that is a more complicated, that's a chemistry answer because you actually have to have a chemical reaction. So when I explain how the mod works, you have to explain that it only works for mixtures that don't require chemical reaction. So ammonium nitrate and fuel, AMPHO, which most people have heard of.
Yep.
That's just literally ammonium nitrate and fuel oil next to each other or intermixed. But sorry, that distracted me. But if you have peroxide and acetone, which is a really good example, that actually has to have a chemical synthesis occur in the lab with catalyst and heat and cool. I don't know. I've never made TATP.
There's an acid in there too, right?
Yeah, there's an acid that's the catalyst. It's citric acid or usually. Anyway, doesn't matter. But the point is you actually have to have a chemical synthesis occur. And so you can't just stick the ingredients. It's like basically saying that if you stuck a thing of cinnamon and a thing of vanilla next to each other, that it would smell like a birthday cake. That's not how it works. You actually have to cook it and make it smell like a birthday cake. So that would be the one exception where the mod is not necessarily helpful.
So practice on the field for us as handlers, it'd be really good to kind of introduce the dog to everything, right? Parts, maybe part of the picture, maybe the whole picture. Would you say that's the best way to solve the problem of having success in the real world?
Yeah, I mean, I think variation is the key. So any relevant variation that the dog needs to find needs to also occur in training.
Yeah.
It actually matches a lot with, if you're following the different AI models, right? These, they all require training data sets.
Yeah.
They're able just to pull from the internet.
Yeah.
And dogs are using biological intelligence, but it works fundamentally the same way that we learn things, right? Through lots of examples.
Yes.
And once you get through one example of this, another example of that, and another example of that, biological intelligence then allows you to extrapolate or generalize is the word that we use to another example that we weren't necessarily trained on. But to do that, we need to have the right numbers of examples, but we also need to have the right variation of examples. So I ask you to do, I might have taught you in elementary school math over and over again of simple addition, and then I ask you to do subtraction. If you were never given a subtraction example, you're not going to spontaneously do that.
Right.
You can see all the numbers together, but you're not going to spontaneously get that unless I also give you examples of subtraction.
Yes.
And then if I give you, 10 examples of addition, 10 examples of subtraction, and then give you 2 known numbers that you haven't ever worked before, you can solve that problem because you can then generalize to that new situation. But if you never had any examples in an area, then that's when you have those problems.
And I teach a lot about contamination. I do a lot of research related to contamination. And one of the things I tell the dog handlers is I'm telling you about this, and I'm telling you to beware of contamination and how that affects the odor profile. But I also tell them don't throw away your contaminated training aids. That's valuable. That's good for maintenance training. It goes towards more variation, more generalization.
So the idea would imprint on pure and then train on as many variations as possible. Is that correct? Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, anything that is possible in the real world should be a training example.
Awesome. And it's funny, I just don't know why I'm thinking about this just now, but on the hemp stuff that we did, it blew my mind that we had green dogs introduced to a marijuana sample, so they became marijuana dogs. And I thought all of those dogs that were introduced to that same marijuana sample would generalize all of the same hemp samples. That's not what we saw, which told me that each dog had a different idea of what marijuana smelled like. they were taking something different to make that picture.
Absolutely. And I think there's studies with C4 that have had similar results, older studies that
Yeah. And
basic profile compared to marijuana, but same idea.
Yeah, it blew my mind. Let's talk about the conference that you guys are going to be putting on, because I think it's really exciting.
So we are spinning the Canine SciCon that I did, and we're combining that with Dr. Cindy Otto's Pen Vet Working Dog Conference. I hope that's exactly what it's called. We are combining them, and we are also bringing in Nathan from Texas Tech, and Melissa Singletary and Lucia Lazarowski from Auburn University, and then also Craig Schultz, who helped me with the Canine SciCon book and is from the FBI. And we're all working together to bring the Joint Symposium for Working K9s, which will be outside of Atlanta in the beginning of April.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely plug that. We'll put the information as well. Thank you guys for making science fun for most of us, because growing up, it definitely was not something I enjoyed growing up. So I do appreciate it, and I know that our listeners definitely do. So thank you for your time, both of you.
thank you.
Thanks
for having us.
Of course.
If you haven't had a chance to get your tickets to the 2025 Joint Symposium for Working K9s, please do not miss out on this one. It's going to be awesome. Just look at the lineup of instructors and you will quickly understand why I'm so excited to go as a student, and of course to interview as many of the instructors as possible. So we hope to see you there. Thank you for all the support here at the Next Level Podcast. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. We'll see you soon.